so we've got that other buff box over up near Bailey. What we're gonna do, because I got another guy out here with me, I'm gonna have him go sit on that, because he had to go out another lowering device. We thought we had enough time, but it would be close. We're gonna test it. Says 12 feet. So we want to make sure we had a lower end device. So I have him run back and grab that. When he gets back, he gets that all set. And I'll probably have him stand here and just sit in on it while I go get the bell. Are you gonna want me to back right up to it? So if you would.
Hi, Rabbi. Oh, I'm okay.
Hanging in?
Yeah.
Good. Good. Hi.
Can I pop this down?
Oh,
Everybody good? Everything all?
Everything's good. Yes.
Got your nail. All right. So I got the live stream all up and running. Do you want to do Keriah at the beginning? Okay, that's good. Hi, I'm Rabbi Hyatt.
Yes,
You're Judy. Nice to see you. I'm so sorry.
Greg, my boyfriend.
Hi, Greg.
Hi. My granddaughter's Faith.
Hi, Faith. How you guys doing?
Yeah.
Hanging in? Come on over. You can sit down. Make yourself comfortable. You can be.
Even if I bring my own chair and sit.
No,
Okay.
not at all. Not at all.
You want me to move this chair for you?
Yes, oh, I can always move this if you want to be in the sun. Okay. Oh, no.
Yes.
I got it, Sage.
Don't bend it.
It's you.
Did you see it?
They've seen it.
You're too good. Actually, I don't know that they
It was the day he was born.
have. It's a beautiful picture. And the blind dog.
What?
Wearing a mask and glasses is not my food. Yeah.
Oh no, it was sneaky.
Now you know how my friend
He looks like Men in Black.
Yeah. He does. He does. Look like Men in Black.
He does. With
Yeah.
the mask and the glasses.
Yeah.
With the shirt and the
He's a little further down that way. Isn't he?
Remember? This, no, just right over here.
Yeah, Jim's
What?
going up.
Just
Thought he was
right
up.
over here.
Like up that way.
No, uh-uh.
Better. Your dad could have started Men in Black.
It's right there. You see those two markers? It's a pretty nice.
Where? Okay, what?
You see those?
The two things in the ground.
Oh
You
yeah.
see the two that's where it is. I think it's right
I
there.
mean, there's not the only one.
No, but I think it's right there.
Mom.
It's a human headstone.
Yeah, that way.
Asking Doug if that would be a problem.
That person's out of my
Is it your phone or is it
birthday.
No.
Huh? Mhm. That was me.
You can easily stand with chairs too.
Let Ronnie run.
Ron set up the.
No.
Ron and Barb.
Are these chairs wet?
No. No, they just sit them out. I don't know.
My
I
chairs
want
are
to be
Ours are
inside.
wet. We had to wipe them down.
Ours are wet.
It's okay, Tommy. Come back. I want to go inside.
It's warmer in the summer.
Well, it's much warmer in here. Thank you.
I was going to do a report.
Yeah. David
Yeah.
got the other one.
I can feel a significant difference between my knees and my shoulders.
So actually, and over there, you see what it is?
I don't know if it's working. It's okay.
Follow me.
I brought my special wolf stone today with me. Do you want to hold on to it?
Yeah. You didn't know that I'm affinity to
You know, I did kind of have the idea because of the gorgeous shirt that we dressed him in. And I just wanted to bring something special today, and that stood out. Yeah.
Yeah. Hear them all over.
Oh, did you? That is so special.
Still walking.
Oh,
We went up north and then to the refuge.
yes, I've heard about that place. That must have been so magical. Oh,
I have to die. I'm a little. It was a listen.
I sent stuff to
Hang on one second. Hang on. Jillian wants to know how to get in here.
tell her to come in the main entrance.
Sorry. Connor, did you find it?
Yeah. Go straight up, turn right. Turn right again.
She'll see the green tent.
Green tent. And Donovan will Connor will. Thank you, honey.
Mom. Grandma, Jim is literally right here. Like, right here. Sitting right
Are we waiting on anyone else to arrive?
I believe that we did receive a call that somebody's calling in.
Okay, wonderful.
Julianne.
Okay, and then when everyone's here, we can go ahead and get started. I've got the lights.
Yeah, I actually just got a text from somebody who said they could see us already. So thank you. I'm gonna could see you. And Dave, Jim is literally right.
He's on the other side of it.
That's him.
I didn't realize it
I
was
didn't
that
realize it
close.
was that close to it. You too, get up here. Come on. Please. You guys want to sit? Please. There's two right here.
We can always redistribute the spacing of the chairs as well for
Run it
families.
for please. If you don't want our germs,
We can move them out just a little bit over this way.
pretty sure we don't have COVID, but we may have other meetings or whatever. Good, Jim.
Is this okay right here? Okay.
There. Julianne said she was.
Well,
You need to.
right there.
Your card?
I told her to look
Marshall.
at the- Marshall?
Oh, hey, Marshall.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hang in there like everybody else.
Oh, there she is.
We're ready? All right, everyone. Before we get started, just a reminder to silence your cell phone. Hi, everyone. I'm Rabbi Hyatt. I'm Rabbi Hyatt. I'm so honored to be with you this morning as we do this incredibly hard and painful thing that we have been tasked with doing. And that is saying goodbye to Evan Michael Stutman. I know that you knew that he was not going to live forever. And yet still, we are not supposed to be here today as we do this final important job for Evan as a community of his family and loved ones. Before we begin, I'm going to keep my mask off if that is okay with you so that the people who are tuning in have a better chance of understanding me. We've discovered it's a little bit hard to do all of those layers of communication. So just keep your distance. And we're actually going to start, Joy, will you? To Dave and Judy, I'm going to give you these ribbons. We begin, as you put them on, we begin our mourning process today. Actually, not by talking yet about Evan, but by talking about you. And it's our custom when we grieve, when we mourn, that sometimes we have a moment where we need to do something physical. And so we begin our service by giving Judy and Dave the opportunity to physically rend something, to tear. And because we don't rend our clothing anymore, they have these ribbons that we call Keriah ribbons. Keriah means to tear. And these ribbons symbolize, as we talked about, a couple of different things. The first is that physical act of tearing. The second thing that this ribbon symbolizes, especially I think for Judy, is that there's a tear in the fabric of your life. And we see that and we know that your life is going to change so dramatically after this moment. And the third reason that we tear is to change your status from people who have had to respond and react to the death of your wonderful brother and son and uncle and brother-in-law and friend, to people who are in mourning. All of the logistics are taken care of. All of those details that you got thrown into handling have been handled. And now we get to the hard work of laying him to rest and then to grieving. And now you become official mourners. And so I'm going to ask you, Judy and Dave, to repeat after me these words. And then in a moment after we say them, I'll ask you to tear your ribbon. So we say, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem, Adonai Mivorach. Means God gives and God takes away. Blessed is the name of God. Go ahead and take your ribbon and tear it just a little bit. It doesn't need to be a lot. Yep, perfect. And then we say Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, which means blessed is the true judge. And we begin our service. There's three parts now to this service, to this work that we have to do. The first is our own preparation, emotionally, spiritually, physically, for the hard work of laying this beloved person to rest. The second part is telling the story of his life. And then the third is actually the physical burial that we will do. So now we take a second to prepare ourselves for this moment. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity, from youth to age and innocence to awareness, from ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and maybe back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude and pain to compassion, grief to understanding and fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until, looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. And as is our tradition, we recite now the words of Psalm 23. In a moment, we'll talk about pretty famous words where we say that as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil. And this psalm has been translated and interpreted so many times to mean that our loved one who has left us is in the valley of the shadow of death. But in fact, I think in this moment, it is you who walks there as mourners. You are in that valley, but you're not in it alone, and you won't be in it forever. And so you huddle together, you join together in that moment of deepest, darkest sadness as we recite these words. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo achsar, bino teshayar b'tzeini, amei menuchot yanah-haleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'magalei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begei tzar mavet lo ira ra, ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha hema yanachamuni, Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorarai. Dishanta b'shemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. And even as I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. And this poem, this final poem, before we get to telling the story of Evan's life, has become so important in this place, in this beautiful space where you will come in moments of sadness and in joy, and in moments of grief and longing. And we come here when we need to be with Evan, when we need to see a space that belongs to him. And yet we know that this space will change. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of the sun, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Our job today, one of them, is to tell the story of Evan's life. One of the most beautiful teachings that I know is that we can't tell the story until we know how it ends. And if you look on any of these beautiful monuments to people's loved ones, there's one symbol that exists on every single one of them that is more important than everything else, more important than names, more important than dates. And it's the little dash that exists between a date of birth and a date of death. And it turns out that dash holds the entirety of the story of their lives. And so today our job is to look at Evan's dash and to tell the story of it. And I want to start by sharing with you something that a reading that I love. It's from a guy named Aaron Freeman who shared this on NPR in 2005. And he said, "You want a scientist to speak at your funeral. You want him to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy so that they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the scientist to remind your grieving mom about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy ever gets created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your mother to know that all your energy, every vibration, every BTU of heat, every wave of every particle that was her beloved child remains with her in this world. You want that scientist to tell her that amid all of the energies of the cosmos, you gave as good as you got." And at one point, you might hope that that scientist would step down from the pulpit and walk to your brokenhearted brother and tell him that all of the photons that ever bounced off of your face, all the particles whose paths were interrupted by your smile or the touch of your hand, hundreds of trillions of particles have raced off now like children, their ways forever changed by you. And as your family mourns, may the scientist let them know that all the photons that bounced from you were gathered in the particle detectors that are their eyes, that those photons created within them the constellation of electromagnetically charged neurons whose energy will go on forever. And that scientist will remind everyone just how much of all of our energy is given off as heat. There may be a few rubbing their hands together for warmth right now as he says it, and he will tell them that the warmth that flowed through you in life is still here, still part of all we are. Even as we mourn, we continue the heat of our own lives. And you'll want that scientist to explain to those who loved you that they need not have faith. Let them know that they can measure, that scientists have measured precisely the conservation of energy and found it accurate, verifiable, and consistent across space and time. You can hope your family will examine the evidence and satisfy themselves that the science is sound, and they'll be comforted to know your energy is still around. According to the law of the conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. It's just less orderly. When Evan Michael Stutman was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, he went into scientist mode. Instead of asking questions of God or of fate or of lapsing into self-pity or sadness, he started asking questions, doing research, understanding his disease and the causes and implications of this particular genetic sequence. He wanted to be able to talk to his doctors about his genes, to understand and to know. And this, I think, was Evan's way of navigating the world, to get it, to be able to speak it, to participate in the way that his world would work. From day one, Evan was really smart, really even-tempered, and really loved his dog. 3 things that would be true through the entirety of his life. Some of the first stories I heard are of him laying on the floor, cuddling with his giant dog, and then teaching himself the alphabet. When he was 2, he was standing at the fridge looking at the magnets, and he was saying all the letters. He taught them all to himself. And Judy said that when a preschool teacher called and said she was worried because Evan was wandering around the room not paying attention while she was reading, Judy said, "Why don't you ask him questions about what you said?" And Evan could answer every one. He was bored, but not mad bored, not even frustrated bored, just curious. And so as he listened, he walked, he learned. He didn't get mad, he didn't act out. He just took it upon himself to explore and to learn on his own time, which is a theme that would continue long after preschool. Academically, he was pretty far ahead of everyone else. He went into a gifted program, and when he started to have some physical problems around the 4th grade, again, in a very Evan way, he invented something to help him stand up more easily from when he was sitting on the floor. In Judy's words, as other young boys were growing taller, stronger, and more independent, Evan was growing weaker and more dependent. When he was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, he figured it out. But then he was faced with a fall at age 16, which he called the Big Bang, and he stopped walking. And so he proceeded to master driving a wheelchair with great finesse. He and Dave would even race wheelchairs in the street to see who would go faster. He was so positive about it. He never complained or wondered why this happened to him. He just was defiant and positive, and I'm going to do it my way. And if it doesn't work, then I'll keep trying. When Evan got to high school, he went to high school 3 days a week. And they offered to have a teacher come in the other 2 days, but he didn't really need one. And so they just gave him assignments. And like in preschool, he learned on his own. In chemistry, they even had to take his grade out of the curve because otherwise he threw the skew too much. He was in the trivia club, and he and his wheelchair and his service dog always got on that bus to go to tournaments, and he ended up lettering in trivia. It seems to me, from the stories that I've heard, that pretty much the worst thing you could do or say to Evan if you didn't want him to do something was to tell him that he probably wasn't able to do it, which meant he would figure out a way. There was a doctor at Children's Hospital who kept saying, "You can't do this, you can't do that." And every time he said that, Evan went and did it anyway. When he got a full academic scholarship to college and everyone said he couldn't drive, what do you think he did? His family found someone from Philadelphia to come in, teach him how to drive. And where's one of the first places he went? To Children's Hospital to drive in front of the doctors who said he couldn't do it. He graduated high school with honors, went to UCD downtown on a full academic scholarship, and when he had breaks, he and Opie, the big golden retriever service dog, would explore downtown. And so he knew downtown better than just about anyone. Now, in his second month of college, things changed a little bit. Evan was in an accident and had to take off the entire semester to heal. The day after the accident, in which he had been hit by a truck while he was crossing the road, he asked the doctor, "Who's stronger, Evan or a Chevy truck?" And then he answered his own question and said that he was obviously stronger because he was fixed after a surgery and the truck still had a big dent in it. After college, Evan's physical stamina was pretty limited. It took him a while to get ready for the day, but once he was there, he had tons of friends online. He played cards, he read books, he had books and books of card games that he played so he could learn more. And he researched. Anything you mentioned, he would do the research, he would learn about it so that he would be the expert in anything he talked about. When he played Scrabble online with his cousins, they would call him on words, but he of course knew what they meant, even if nobody else did. If you had a joke or a pun, he would continue with another 5 before he was done. He loved baseball, he loved to play, he loved to joke. But here's what we really know. Evan was gracious. He was incredibly gracious about how he accepted help when his body stopped working, when he needed help doing even the most menial of tasks. He was kind about accepting help because he was incredibly kind. He didn't have a bad thing to say about anyone, and he was incredibly forgiving. He was practical. There was no bitterness about his situation. It was just matter of fact into problem solving. He was an inspiration. So many people have reached out to his family to talk about what an inspiration he was because of the way he lived his life. But most of all, Evan loved his family, and they loved him. In addition to his mom, who dedicated her life to taking care of him, Evan and his brother Dave have been incredibly close. And Dave told stories about when Evan was born and how he remembers that day. He imagined all the things that they were going to do together. And while Dave has had to amend the activities in those dreams, the boys found ways to hang out, to spend time together. They were opposites, but they knew how to connect, and they were funny together. And Evan loved his nephews and niece, Jonathan, Connor, and Sage, and loved to be with them and spend time with them. But I think of all of that, the story that sticks with me the most is the one Judy told me of Evan in the OR before they put him out for one of his surgeries. And before he would let the doctors put him to sleep, they would wheel him into the OR and he would demand that they explain everything. All of the parts that they were going to use, all the equipment, all of the steps, what they were going to do, because he needed to know how things work. And because he understood how they work, I think that's why he wasn't angry about them, because he got it. And if Evan were here, with his big brain and his easygoing nature, his patience, determination, kindness, and his need to know how things operate, how things work, he'd be able to tell us maybe how this works, how this beautiful family is supposed to learn how to live without him. And so, in the words of that scientist, we remember that first law of thermodynamics. No new energy is created in the universe and none is destroyed. And so we can be assured that all of Evan's molecules and his energy and his warmth and his patience, his sense of humor, his kindness, his determination, and most of all, his love are all still right here, bouncing around in the cold, reminding us that not a bit of Evan is gone. He's just less orderly. And as we prepare now to say goodbye to Evan's physical presence in our lives, we chant the words of our tradition. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem betuvo, v'heinit etchem badin. V'nata betochechem chaye olam. Baruch Atah Adonai, Dayan ha'emet. Atah gibor le'olam, Adonai Rav le'hoshia. Mechalkel chaim b'chesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim v'rofeh cholim, umatir asurim. Umekayem emunato l'shenei afar. Lichamocha ba'al gevurot, u'midom elav. Melech meimid u'mechaye u'matzmiach Yeshua. Baruch Atah Adonai, Notea b'tocheinu chaye olam. Dayan ha'emet, shofet tzedek be'emet, Baruch Dayan ha'emet. Yichol mishpatav tzedek be'emet, nefesh kol chai b'yadecha, tzedek mal'a yamincha b'yadecha. Rachem al tzon yadecha, v'tomar l'malach terech yadecha. Gadol ha'etza v'rav ha'aliyah, asher einecha pekuchot al kol derachai b'nei adam, v'atei le'ish titrachav, v'tifri ha'alalav lehadit yashar Adonai. Suri velo avlat habo, Adonai Natan Adonai Lakach, Yihi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Devarachim Yesater Avam velo yashlit, Vehirba lahashiv hakol, velo ya'ir kol hamato. We have an opportunity now to do one of the most beautiful mitzvot, or acts, deeds that we have in Jewish tradition, and also one of the hardest. In a moment, I'm going to invite Judy and then Dave and then anybody else that wants to participate in the act of helping us to fill Evan's grave with earth. We do this because it's our job to make sure that he rests in a safe and peaceful place. And we want to participate in that, in making sure that he is in this final, safe, beautiful space. And I imagine, especially for Judy, as we talked about yesterday, for so many years, you have made sure that he is safe and comfortable and fed and has what he needs, and that his life is as easy as it can be. And you have one last moment of doing for him. And one of the things that we say about this tradition is that it's one of the most beautiful because it's one of the things our loved ones can't thank us for. And yet we do it for them anyway. A few logistics. There's one shovel. In our tradition, our first shovelful we do with the shovel backwards. It's really hard to shovel with the back of a shovel. And this is really hard emotionally and spiritually. And so we symbolize that. We traditionally do 3 shovelfuls of dirt or handfuls. And given the world that we're living in, there are also some plastic gloves and some cups. You may use any of those that you want, or just your hands, which is what my tradition is, to just take some of that dirt and place it in. I'll ask you to please keep your distance from each other and from people that are not in your family groups as you participate. And finally, one of the other traditions that we have, which is perfect for a pandemic but predates it, is that we don't hand a shovel or a cup from one person to another. Each of us is entitled to our own grief, our own moment in this moment. And so we don't pass what we feel or what we experience from one person to another. And so I'm going to invite you, Judy, to come on up. Dave, you can come with her. And then You can form when they're done a single file line if you'd like to participate, and we'll just take a moment of silence. For the first one. And then the other two, if you want to do more than that, we'll do as well.
Get out of here. Get him. Stop. Walk away.
Please rise for the memorial prayer. El Mali Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat Eliezer Shaul Ben Godechia, Shehalach Leolamo, Bal Harachamim Yasirehu, V'Seker Knafav Leolamim, V'Yitzror B'Tzror Chaim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'Yanuach B'Shalom, Al Mishtavo, V'Nomar, Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and pure whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold Eliezer Shaul ben Goldechia close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May he find a home with you. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. And in our final responsibility today, we begin the tradition of our mourners in this moment, reciting the ancient words of the mourner's Kaddish, which we say anytime we have this opportunity to remember someone we loved who is no longer with us. And our sages teach that these words don't hold any mention of death. They only talk of God and of life. And what makes that even more precious is that I think that's very Evan, to focus on what's beautiful, what's possible, rather than to focus on what is sad and what's missing. And so together, you can follow along if you have a card in the English or the transliteration of the Hebrew or the Hebrew. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabah, ve'ama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyamechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevorach leolam uleomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrama Huya aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who makes peace on high make peace for us and for all of Israel. And we say together, Amen. Adonai. Go your way, for God has called you. Adonai Go your way, and may God be with you. V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha, devor Adonai, Yasvecha. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God precede you. And we say to all of you, to all of our mourners today, our traditional words of comfort. Hamakom yinachem etchem b'tov sha'ar of Leit Zion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our service.
Hi, I'm Felicia. I don't know what happened, but I guess it was very, I'm sorry you lost. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. We are now signing off.
So sorry.